Good morning, everybody. It's a very special day today, a very special morning. And we're going to have Doris Brothers, my colleague for a long time and friend, and we haven't seen each other for so long. And I've loved Doris's work and taught her work. And I quote her all the time about trust is the glue that holds the self together. It's, I think of that as your gift to the world, just the way it's said. And
Oh,
we prepared last time talking about the lived experience of uncertainty. And now we're ready to hear from Doris about the psychology of uncertainty and all of the things that she's into and doing in this amazing time that we're living through. So, welcome, welcome. And Dorothy will introduce Doris.
hello. I met Doris in the 1980s, and we worked together at Cathedral School of St. John the Divine in New York City. And I was advocating to get a psychologist for the children, and we were very fortunate to be able to have Doris come. And Doris really introduced me to self-psychology, which has been so important to me in my life. But she's done a number of things, been quite involved the field. She's a co-founder of the Training and Research in Intersubjective Self Psychology Foundation, and it's been on your board, and is also involved with the International Association for Psychoanalytic Self Psychology. And she has authored a number of books. The first one I was introduced to was The Falling Backwards, which I love the title, but any imaginable idea of trust that you could think of. It's just amazing the depth of that Doris went to in exploring the whole idea of trust. And then toward a psychology of uncertainty, which is the one that we've been exposed to, which has a great deal about very, very fresh ways of thinking about trauma. And more recently, she's involved with the Embodied, the writing a book called Talking Bodies with her partner, Jon Sletvold. Did I get that right?
Oh, perfect.
And they're working on a forthcoming book. And Doris spends part-time in Oslo, Norway, and then part-time here in New York. And I want Doris just to refer to on May 17th, there's going to be a conference. And Doris, maybe if you just say a word about that before you begin, I think we'd like.
Yeah, I'd love to. John and my husband John and I are co-founders of what we call the Wilhelm Reich Center for the Study of Embodiment. And in collaboration with the White Institute in New York, we put on events a few times a year that are really conversations on embodiment, different topics. We've looked at embodiment and trauma. We've looked at the last one was on, we looked at embodiment and sex and gender. We looked at embodiment and race last time. And on May 17th, I think this was going to be really dynamite. We have people who are coming to talk about the embodiment of madness. And among the people, what we usually do is have a few people who spend a few minutes talking about their ideas. They talk with one another, and then it's open to the audience. And the people who will be involved on May 17th are Daniel Posner, Claire Bien, Louis Sass, who has written a great deal. I think many of you know his work on madness, and a wonderful Nigerian. I don't know what means to say Nigerian, Norwegian. No, Nigerian couldn't be farther away from Norway. A Norwegian the psychologist Vincent Stephen, and it promises to be very exciting. So we hope you'll join.
Thank you.
So am I on, Dorothy? Shall I?
Yes.
Okay. I was telling Lynn and Dorothy that I don't really like to just keep talking. Liz, you know, I'm, I, I really like to hear from people and to have it be a give and take. So please talk to me. I know that you had a group and got acquainted with some of my ideas about uncertainty, but Lynn mentioned just a couple of minutes ago that you started meeting as a group when the pandemic started in 2020. And God in heaven, was that an uncertain time? Amazingly, this is such a coincidence, Lynn. I have this book. Can you see it? It's called
Yes.
Vulnerables by Sigrid Nunez.
Huh.
And it starts, let me find, it starts with these words. It was an uncertain spring.
Mm,
And
yes.
you know what? You know, there are a lot of things about that uncertain spring. Jon and I were in New York then, and we were very, very afraid that if he went back to Norway, we would never see each other again. Because
Mm,
it turned out that I wasn't allowed for a long time to go to Norway. He wasn't allowed to come to the States during the pandemic. Talk about living with uncertainty. If you know, think that you're never going to see the guy you love again, and you don't know if it's ever going to happen or you're going to survive the time. But think about those early months, weeks, days of the pandemic. We don't really talk about it much, do we? It's almost like a big silence has fallen over that period of enormous uncertainty. And I'm just going to ask you to, what comes back to you about that time and maybe about the uncertainty of that time? What was most on your minds? What were you thinking? What were you feeling?
Share the stress of financial instability. I
Wow.
had two kids in college, we were both working in the area.
Wow. When, Beth, when you think about that now, does it feel like it belonged to a different era and that you're finished with that, or is it still with you? Those feelings, are they there?
They're there daily, yes. I mean, financial instability of getting three kids through college in the United States is already a stressor, but in the midst of being in the midst of that in the pandemic
Yeah,
was overwhelming.
absolutely, absolutely. And I guess we are all sort of reeling about, Tariffville that we've been plunged into, and what's going to happen to our financial lives, economic lives in the future is certainly on our minds now. Anybody else want to say something about that time and whether it's the uncertainty of that time lives with you? What about it?
Comes up for me is the fear of my partner and my daughter getting sick, and
Yeah.
then what would be the far-reaching effects and how sick would they get, and with death being all around us and people that we cared about being in the hospital, and the whole idea of, also having a client who couldn't go to the hospital and see his mother as when she was dying, just a whole fear of sickness and death.
Do you, does it feel sort of still current? It wasn't so long ago, you know. This is 25. That was, it started in 20. I mean, the height of it was maybe 21 before the vaccine. Does it feel like it's very near or far? What does it feel like?
It it actually it comes in waves, but it feels near at times. And the whole idea of the vaccines, and they've been discredited, and then you should get them. Just the whole uncertainty around how you take care of yourself is definitely, and how you take care of the people you love is definitely with me.
Sure. And I don't have to ask you if what was going on when you went on the screen. Some of us went on screens for the first time to see our patients. We didn't see them in our offices because we didn't want to get sick. We didn't want to make people sick. And so we all turned to Wi-Fi and Zoom. And I don't know if it was Skype or FaceTime or whatever we did at first to get on. Now it's Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. But I know that so much of what we were dealing with were the effects of that uncertainty. As Dorothy said, would we survive? What about what Beth said, our economic futures? All of that coming up. Would we see people again? Would we be in contact again? Was affecting the people we were working with. And for me, maybe I don't know whether it's just because I'm so tuned into uncertainty, but it struck me that the uncertainty around what was happening during the pandemic was kind of hooking up with other areas of uncertainty in my patients' lives. I'm wondering if you guys had that experience or not.
Ruth, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. For me, it's the opposite. Can people hear me? It's the opposite, because I had been teaching on Zoom already for 6 years. It was my so I was all set up and I was busier than ever because all the people that had thought about learning focusing but didn't have time suddenly had time. So, and because I'm single, it was, so I didn't have that issue of a partner, and it was almost as though, well, now everybody is having the quiet life that I'm used to having. And so, and I loved it because it was quiet, it was safe, there wasn't the traffic because people where I live were not allowed to go more than 100 meters from their homes. So people were not going out.
Yeah.
Whereas now my life feels so incredibly topsy-turvy and unstable that we've been in a war for 556 days now, and I turned 70 over the last year, and so I'm shifting. I'm still working, but I'm shifting. So there's a lot between the war, and then also I'm a dual citizen. I'm a citizen of Israel and a citizen of the US. So both of my governments are nuts. And
so it's right now is where you are being smacked in the head with uncertainty in a way that was almost absent for you because it was so familiar to work on the screen. It was quiet. It was more peaceful then. Is that
yeah,
right?
and of course I can sense inside and know and find that, yeah, it was there. I just didn't notice it. But now I can't miss it. And now it's palpable. You can just feel it in the air. Everybody feels it.
Yeah.
So,
A question. Yeah, please go on. Go on.
the one thing as you were speaking, it made me realize, because I'm feeling this lack of stability so acutely, and there's some lack of hope that comes along with it, but just you're bringing up I came today because I saw your topic and I said, yes, I want to be here for this. And I've also been sick for weeks now, which is not like me because I'm usually quite strong, and
Sorry, Ruth.
my energy is really low. It's not life-threatening. It's just won't go away. One of those things. But I had the realization of like the yin and yang, and I don't mean to be Pollyanna, but just how sometimes when it's like this, we can't imagine it not being like this. And so it gave me a little glimmer of some light shining.
Well, thank you.
Things do change. They change. That's what's inevitable.
Yeah. You know what's so funny about being hopeful is that it's dangerous. You know that in order to hope, you have to be able to tolerate uncertainty to some extent because it may happen. Hope by its very nature means it may not. And you have to be able to hope. You may have to get somewhere with your struggle with uncertainty. And I think that some patients who are complain of hopelessness are really telling us, I can't bear one more shred of uncertainty. Is what's happening now really on the edge of something better happening? I hope, I hope, I hope. Or, you know, I don't want to go there. I don't want to even think that it may get better because, oh my God, what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't get better? What if it gets worse and worse and worse? Yeah, which is always, you know, and the absolute worst is that I will not go on being. And I will not go on being because the people I count on around me will somehow not be available. That not only the people, but the institutions, the ways that our country, what we prize in our country, won't be available to sustain us. And that is, you know, a pretty daunting, scary thing. Is it better not to hope that it will, or to say, no, it's just not it. This is it. We're finished. You know, it's all being ruined. Or can we sustain our hope? And how do we do that? Any thoughts about that?
I don't want to monopolize, but I just wonder if sometimes our hope is tied to something happening in a certain way. It's a closed-mindedness, and if we can more open our whatever possibilities to, because oftentimes a solution or an answer or a something comes to help us from an area we would never have expected. And if we're only looking in this way, we'll miss this. So
Yeah.
I think that's
you're verging on an area that I was hoping to talk a little bit about. And that has to do with needing to know and needing not to know as a way of dealing with our uncertainty. But when we have just fixated on one route, one solution, we don't want to know that there are other possibilities. What could you be a little more specific, Ruth, about what you had in mind?
it's just my little life of well, this is a really small example. I remember I was sitting here, actually sitting in a different chair. I switched my chair with the holidays, give myself a different way of seeing things. So I was feeling at the beginning of February very hopeless for various reasons. It was in my living environment. There's a lot of noise that I had no control over, and that was a new thing, and just various things. And somebody in America said, I'm going away. You can stay in my place for 2 weeks. And I thought, so I look into the fares and they're outrageous. And then I just thought, well, if I can get out of this country, because our airlines aren't flying to Israel. So I booked one ticket to Rome. And then I found that Delta has a round trip, very affordable from Rome to New York, round trip. And I'm not a last minute person, but I booked myself a ticket and I went.
Whoa.
And And I had a lot of adventures, not all of them positive, many of them not positive, but each one taught me something. That each one, even I sprained my ankle at one point, and I'm a person that thinks I have to be strong because how am I going to get around? I don't have somebody to help me out. And I got around and people helped me. And I happened to have bought new hiking boots a week before I sprained my ankle, and lo and behold, they supported my ankle. So it was just, that's just a little example, but there are many of those kinds of things.
Sometimes the things that we don't know come and help us, that we could not have anticipated, could not have known. That's something wonderful. And I think that this not knowing and kind of, I think it's good to cultivate an attitude of what my husband and I call meeting one another as foreign bodies. And that means we can't know everything about the people that we meet and we work with, and we can't know everything about ourselves. So we leave room for those wonderful surprises like, oh my God, the hiking boots actually support my ankle. I didn't know that would be, I would have to call on those hiking boots for that.
Or there's another way to get to America. besides LL for $5,000 one way.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ruth.
I wanted to add in here that Brother David Stendhal Rast, who people know I love, talks about the difference between hopes and hope. And hopes are like your children that you gather on your lap, give you courage and inspiration. But after all of those children get off your lap and leave, then you have hope. It's what's left when the hopes that you've relied on are gone, and you can let them go.
That's interesting.
Right.
That's an interesting, but I like the idea of all the hopes on my lap.
Also what comes to me is, because I'm a focusing trainer, is that when I am scared and feel hopeless, the space inside gets really small. I just want to sit like this. I want to bow my head. I want to weep. Yeah. But when I can open and see what's there, then these answers, they're almost like little jack-in-the-boxes. They pop up when we can open. That's what I meant by open the field. I think we all have within us all these little seeds that want to sprout if we can only put a little water or air on them.
Thank you, Ruth.
Beth was raising her hand for a very long.
Beth, please.
I love this, what you were saying about meeting one another as foreign bodies, because when I think about being a therapist, we already before the pandemic have always had this holding hope as a condition of positive regard.
Say that again, that we have this what?
Holding hope as a condition of positive regard, like a client sets a goal or they have an intention of what is that life force that they're looking for, the difficulties that the problems they're trying to solve, whatever it is they come for. And as a therapist, you're kind of holding that space, that condition for positive regard. And so I think in the pandemic, in some way, what Lynn was pointing toward as well is this, like all these children on your lap got bigger and bigger and bigger, and the uncertainties got wider and wider and wider, and holding hope for not only yourself but for others. There was this element of, in order to stay with a capacity to be a therapist in this world during the pandemic
Mhm.
was to also find the generativity in oneself that could get underneath holding all of that.
Yeah. Yes, and I do think that there is something about being able to tolerate that, being able, and it's very hard to do it on your own. It's very much better if we can be with others who support these little sparklings that emerge and you know, allow us to tolerate the possibility always there that not going to happen, might not happen. Yeah. Thank you, Beth. Thanks for waiting. And Nancy, I think you had something. Yes. Can't hear you.
What I was thinking was similar to what you were just mentioning, that the unknown. I mean, I've had to become used to the unknown and tolerate the unknown, and it's okay today. But for 15 years, I've dealt with cancer, so I never know what's happening. But I mean, I used to be a wreck over that because I didn't know, and I still like to know the answers to different things, but to become able to tolerate this moment without knowing what's going to happen 10 moments from now or months from now is somehow, I'm not sure how it came to be that I can tolerate the unknown better. But I do know that I have had lots of support. I can talk about it. I can be with it in that way.
Yes.
But there's really nothing in life that we know is going to be exactly as we want it.
Nope.
There's always unknown, whether it's relationships, whether it's the weather, whether it's health. It doesn't, you know, we just don't know.
No.
So to be able to be in a particular moment, to try to just be in it. And I don't always succeed, but the more I can, the more peaceful I'm at.
I like that so much, Nancy. And yeah, I mean, God, we are all going to die. We don't know when. It could be right away. It could be a long time from now. But it's kind of like if we can sort of accept in some way that knowing that it is so impermanent, these lives that we lead. And how do we live in this moment together? And it's a fresh, exciting adventure, I think, every time we consider that. What's now? I mean, I never met you guys. I'm excited about connecting with all of you and hearing what you have to say about these things. That they matter to me. You are giving so much. Who knew? Thanks, Nancy, and good luck with your cancer, and let's hope it stays far away from you. Nurit.
At the time of the pandemic, I was working with as a craniopsychotherapist, which is a hands-on therapist.
Yeah.
And I could not work. I didn't have work because we could not touch, we could not be with other people in the same space.
Yeah.
So it was, we had support from the government, you know, in a certain way we got, so that was okay. And it wasn't that bad in a way. And then it gave me the opportunity to pause. That's what happened. And when in the pause, a dream that I had for many years came through, professional dream came through, which was, at that time, I was a student of focusing. I mean, I was in the course of focusing. So, and that was to start working verbally with people, not just by touch.
Uh-huh.
Just because I trusted the body so much that I did not have to use words. And then all of a sudden, the need to use words. So I have decided, I had a very old dream, I'm also from Israel, to work with trauma.
Uh-huh.
And that gave me an opening to start working in a very different way. As a person who grew up with a lot of uncertainties, you know, either in my environment, you know, in a war zone in Israel and all of that, it's one of my biggest challenges to live with uncertainties. But this morning, after having really like very difficult night, because who knows what's going to happen to my money and how I'm going to survive. And then when I got up, I said, you can keep moving no matter the circumstances. Keep moving, because surprises, excitements, like what you said, you know, are out there. In other words, I feel the hard thing is to really get frozen by all that.
Uh-huh.
And the freezing is like you cannot do anything about it. You get stuck in that place.
Oh, Marie, thank you for saying that. I want to say something about that freezing when you're finished telling your story.
Yeah.
Thank you for referring to that. It's so important.
Yes, it is. And I work with the nervous system a lot. And I just took a course about emotion in the body, how to release, how to work with emotion through embodiment. And it was, it really taught me a tremendous deal. And I just wanted to say that the freeze is the thing that I want to work with, because it's all an illusion. That in a certain way, uncertainty is an illusion because we're always uncertain. That's what I wanted to say.
It's you know, I'm not sure which one, certainty or uncertainty, is the illusion, but it doesn't matter because they're.
It doesn't matter because, I mean, are we really safe? Are we really, really, really safe? Never. I don't think so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just elaborate a little bit on the idea of freezing. You know, in this book that Jon and I wrote called Talking Bodies, we talk about how we attend to what we call I, you, we, and world. And that if we lived in an optimal world, this flow from myself to the other, to our sense of being together, and to the outside world. World is a shorthand for everything that isn't relational, like science, politics, you know, you name it. That doesn't have to do with human relations, but they all flow and they all interweave, and that this IUE flow of one person intersects with the IUE flow of others. But when trauma confronts us with the uncertainty of our going on being, that flow is so complex we can't bear it because we have to reduce uncertainty in the face of trauma. One aspect of the flow comes to dominate. So we think that when somebody becomes in the face of trauma, can become very I-centered, you know, grandiose, narcissistic people. We think it's a result of trauma slowing the flow to the other. That can happen very, very early in life. We can become you-centered, like Bernie Brandschaft's, you know, pathologically accommodating other. And some people are very you-centered. Some people are very we-centered. And sometimes, you know, that becomes us and them, but we won't go there right this minute. But we talk about trauma, and Nurit was alluding to it as freezing. We talk about trauma as slowing. It's like, that the spell that's cast in the fairy tales, like befalls Sleeping Beauty, that slows down the flow. And only one aspect of our experience becomes dominant because we can't bear the complexity of this intermingling of I, you, we, and world all around us. So thank you, Nurit. I wanted to get that in today.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. And Susan.
Yes, I'm incredibly inspired by Nurit and Ruth. So I want to shout out to you both because, I'm hearing how the uncertainty is there for you and how you found other touch points as well and sort of broadened your lens. And I'm having to do that for myself because I lost a job, and particular things that happened sort of touched earlier experiences in my life. And I had to work through all that. I'm still in this uncertain place, but I'm now in the place of broadening my lens. When I think about COVID, I think about all the wonderful things that happen to people in COVID as well, like what you were talking about, Nurit, that your dream came true. And popular culture, Taylor Swift created several albums during COVID, and that was born out of her need to stay in the limelight. But what she created was amazing, and I think that's the trick of it, to hold the other space. Well, at least for me, the space of joy, or the space of openness that's still here, even though I was overcome by a very uncertain event, and that also created or brought up trauma for me.
Mm-hmm.
And just to hold those two places, and like what you were saying, Ruth, hold them in the body, and be kind to the part of ourselves that's overwhelmed and that constricts and that does become simple because we're struggling, and be kind to that as well as, in this process as well.
Susan, it was so beautiful that you were able to celebrate how Nurit and Ruth managed to find their way through the uncertainty of their time and to come out with something good. And it sounds like you've done the same yourself, that you have found ways to go that weren't available at some point, huh?
But I remembered back to, I remember, wait a minute, this is wider than, what is going on at the moment. And so that's what I'm starting to do now. I'm getting what we call getting our sea legs.
Uh-huh.
So that's what's happening for me right now. But it took a while, and certain members of this group were also super supportive in that process, and I feel like Nurit and Ruth are like role models here today for me. They're like beacons. They're like lighthouses.
So beautiful, Susan. And I think, Liz, just one sec. I think that the idea of the we connectedness that we can form, we can be inspired and encouraged and emboldened by the stories that we hear from others. It's not just, knowing that someone else has overcome something very difficult that took some courage can be inspiring and help us.
Part of me, give full disclosure, honesty, I wasn't going to say this. Part of me was impatient with our discussion of COVID because I'm like, why are we talking about COVID? We have uncertainty right now from the paper when, come on, the global world is fleeing our assets, and when people are getting snatched off the street and the Supreme Court is being ignored. I mean, come on, like, are we gonna talk about this 4 years from now? Or we could, if when we discuss uncertainty,
Yes.
like 4 years
Let,
ago,
I think
like,
we need,
I mean, I'm just curious.
Susan.
Part of me was also patient because I thought, oh, well, maybe it's easier to talk about COVID because it already happened and
That-
less charge than what's happening today. But then again, I felt like New Reed and Ruth were saying, hey, something's happening to me right now. And so was it Mary? So was Mary. Something's happening to me right now. Hello. Like, I don't have to talk about 2020.
Thank you, Susan. And it's very interesting that sometimes, and I think that I was too influenced by the idea that sometimes people aren't ready to break the silence around a new period of uncertainty. I just tell you for a second, I went to South Africa just after Nelson Mandela was released, and I was at a trauma conference, and I said, I thought, oh my God, everybody's going to be wanting to talk about the traumas of apartheid. Here it's, big, exciting turn. And I asked for people to talk about the trauma of apartheid. Guess what? This whole, I don't know how many people, over 100 people, nobody raised their hand. And I was very, very, and after 9/11, going to the police stations and fire stations, and people saying, I'm not ready to talk. And so I'm not sure whether people want to talk about the uncertainty of this time or not, but Susan, you're letting me know they do, and you do, and I'm very, very, very eager to hear. But before we do that, let me ask Liz what was on her mind.
Oh, I just want to say one thing to that. I'm sorry. I have to believe, and maybe Beth will contradict me or something. I have to believe that clients are coming into the office and some of them, and talking about this. And so whether Beth, or not to single her out, or anybody wants to talk about her now, in this role, we are forced to come to terms with it because of what people are bringing in.
Susan, there isn't, I don't have one patient who hasn't been talking about the horrors in one way or another. So, well, well taken. Absolutely. Thank you.
I've said enough. Thank you.
No, you could, I don't think you have, but good thoughts and beautiful words. Thanks, Susan. Liz.
I just want to share briefly that my creativity was ignited because of the isolation during COVID. So what I did is I went and bought a 75-pound piece of peach-colored alabaster, and I started to carve it. And it was just so symbolic of all the feelings I was having as I chipped away and sanded. And so that's sort of the gift that the pandemic gave me, because I hadn't sculpted for a very long time.
Oh,
so it was a wonderful metaphor for me to reconnect with aspects of myself as well. So just
wonderful. Do you have your sculpture?
It's in California. I sent it to my son.
Oh, do you have a photo?
Yeah, but I don't want to waste time.
Okay, but you send it to me, okay?
Sure. Thank you.
No, and I do think that there is room for enormous creativity in the face of these times. And God knows we need it now. But I do want to, just in the time that we have left, not much, a few minutes, Dorothy, is it okay?
Yeah, we have about almost 10 minutes.
Okay. Let us talk about what is going on for you dealing, it's one thing when patients come and they talk about something that isn't your trauma. And sometimes that's easier. Sometimes it's harder because we haven't experienced it and we can draw on something in ourselves that helps us to connect. But sometimes when we are going through something horrendous and with our patients, can be pretty challenging. And I wonder if people want to talk about what it's like to be sitting in the throes of the uncertainty of this time. Will we survive as a nation, as a people, as individuals? What is going to happen? And what is it like to meet with people who are also struggling with the same questions now? Anybody want to say what they're up against?
I just want.
Norit, did you? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought that was your hand up. No.
No, it's Lenore.
Lenore, please.
Hi. It's interesting because I've been going through some physical symptoms that may have to do with uncertainties in my life right now. And when I'm sitting with some of my clients and they're in a place of uncertainty or trauma, my physical symptoms start to act up.
Interesting.
And it's like a diagnostic clue to me for myself and the person I'm with that I'm starting to feel bodily sensations. And I realize that, oh, they're feeling some kind of uncertainty in their life that somehow my body is connecting to in some way. It's interesting how it happens.
Yes.
Happens at times. So,
So
there's my anxiety.
Anxiety, stress, not so good for our bodies, I think, to live with that. And, when we see a number of people during the day and all of this gets touched on, boy, oh boy, it can really make the body kind of cry in sympathy in various ways with all of that. Yeah. Thanks, Lenore. Other reactions to the uncertainty of the Trump era, the Trump 2, and working with your patients now?
I just want to say that for me, the COVID time and this time seem similar.
In what way, then?
Well, that COVID, when COVID hit, it was like, what? This can't happen. This is ridiculous. No. I can't even go out on the street without wearing a mask. I can't go to a restaurant. I have to wash everything that is delivered. It was no. And then slowly it's seeping in that this was a time that called for a completely new way of dealing with life. And being creative and resourceful in completely different ways. And then this time feels like it's just dawning on me in the same kind of way, like, wow, everything has to be reconsidered. And it can't be the way it was even last year, that there's something happening that calls for a completely new response, and that I'm just taking that in now. What the uncertainty of, well, what does it mean, and what is called for from me?
So for you, it was the slowness of really letting yourself know that it is the same. For me, I didn't have the luxury of it this time. Right after Trump was elected, and he started, and Musk started the firings of the Fed employees. I work with this amazingly lovely lawyer who works for the government, and her the base was Dallas. She loves her little apartment in New York. The people in Dallas said you can't work remotely anymore. You have to come down here if you want to keep your job. She fled New York, moved down to Dallas, got an apartment right away. She's very energetic, and then the office where she was supposed to work, they couldn't house the people who wanted to keep their jobs and came down. So there she is working online in Dallas rather than in her beloved New York. So that was one story. I work with a couple, one of whom is transitioning. They are scared out of their minds and are moving to plan to move to Montreal. They think it will be better there, who knows? But their lives have been just at the moment when this transition, which was so thought through, carefully understood by both of them, what was going to happen. We spent hours and hours and hours talking about the possibility. As soon as this was, decided, boom, they worried about getting the hormone treatments and all of the stuff that will be necessary, and also the hostility and hatred toward the trans community these days. I could go on. So for me, Lynn, I've been socked in the head with people who are just lambasted by the horrors, and it came so much faster than I ever imagined. This could happen. So both ways of experiencing what's going on. I'm sure that there are others. Or anybody else want to say what it's like for you?
I just want to say that it's the combination of this splash of cold water.
Yeah.
This abrupt, the world is different. And then the taking that in, what it means that the world is different.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. That's a good point, Lynn. What does it mean? Yeah, and and what can we do? What do we do?
There's a focusing question that focusing therapists love to ask. What does it need? Meaning this whole thing. What does it need?
What does it need? Yeah, answers. What does it need? Yeah, Nancy.
It's like a moment-to-moment challenge as things are constantly changing and having to decide, well, which way am I going to step this time? What do I do in response to that? And it can be very stressful. Or if we can kind of accept that that's the way life is, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, it's almost like a dance. Where do I go next? Where do I step next? I'm not sure where my I don't know if confidence is the right word, but that somehow I'll figure out how to turn in the right way. Or maybe it'll be in the wrong way, but I'll learn something from that mistake. But to be constantly in a state of anxiety over wondering what's going to happen next is more dangerous to me. It destroys some of who I am, because if I'm in that state of anxiety, I can't respond to others or myself in ways that can be helpful.
Yeah, Lenore was saying it, that it creates physical symptoms.
Yes.
It's really tough to live with that, for sure. I'm very impressed by the Liz, by your finding this creative outlet for taking up sculpture again. Norit's finding a new way to go in therapy, working through issues in one way or another that are many of you have noticed. And I'm wondering, is it that also that the uncertainty that when you can't get away from it shakes up the just ordinary going on being and makes room for kind of like more exciting, interesting, creative, special ways of going on being? Is that a possibility that, maybe this is Pollyanna and a little nutty, but is it possible that this time will allow us to find new solutions to old problems? No, Marianne has something to say.
This is an interesting discussion. A few things I want to say. February, I attended an event, and one of the workshops was the therapist speaking. It was something to do with anxiety and using anxiety as a strength. But we went around the circle and introduced ourselves, why we're there, that kind of stuff. And then the instructor said a few more things. And then she stood up. This was an outdoor event. It was in a tent. She stood up with her notepad and she walked away. Like kept walking like towards the woods. And each of us were like, one person was saying, well, she wants us to follow her, and someone else was, so each of us kind of came up. And so she came back after a little bit and she asked each of us how what we thought. She said her point was how much our brains don't like not knowing, like we fill in, like we made up stories about what she was doing. Each of us had a different view of why she was doing that. And so how much our brains don't like that uncertainty and will make up stuff to fill in.
Yes.
I found that very interesting.
Mhm.
And
Oh, yes.
I don't know, I've been through a whole lot in my life, as all of us have, but I've come to a place where I've got a lot more acceptance and less fear. We talk about taking things in our body and holding things and living in stress. I've been in a stressful situation for many years and I'm coming out of it now. I've been through a lot of things that have kind of put me more into a place of acceptance. And when I'm uncertain about something, to me, I can look at it as there's unlimited possibilities. If I'm certain about something, then that's this little boxed in thing. But if there's something uncertain, then there's unlimited possibilities that could occur, and they're not all bad. I mean, sometimes we try to think like, okay, so the economy or this is going to happen, but like people have demonstrated already that during the pandemic, things good came out of that put them in a situation where they had to, where they were able to follow something they wanted to do. So just I like the thought of the uncertainty being the possibility, because everything's most stuff is uncertain, we can only control ourselves. We can't control what someone else is going to do. And
that need to know what is very powerful. And the trouble is that we can't know things for certain. There's really very, very little that we, especially about ourselves or about the other person. It's very, very hard to know. So it's kind of like it can feel very urgent, the need to know, because we want a way out of the uncertainty. But what's equally powerful is the need not to know. Yeah. And there may have been clues about what the woman was doing when she went off into the woods, that people just didn't want to know, that there were possibilities that we didn't want to face. What if she was never going to come back, for God's sake, And I think that there are, that these needs can feel like life or death. They can feel like the most important things in the world. And unbelievably, they are unreachable. Sometimes when we don't want to know something, we can't help knowing because our bodies, in connection to other bodies, have been made aware. Maybe because we're in pain, because of a symptom that occurs, or something that knocks us on the head, and we can't help it. And sometimes all of this are possible ways to grow and develop. That these are opportunities. So maybe there is an opportunity, maybe there isn't, about this really, really scary time. I don't think there's any way around the fact that we're scared out of our noodles. Very few people are just being, oh, it'll be fine. I don't believe the people who are saying, even those around Trump who are saying, oh, it'll be fine. I don't believe they really feel that way. Any other thoughts before we move on?
One thought I have is that for me, I think the pandemic was a kind of practice for this.
Interesting.
When we talked about the pandemic, it was very helpful for me because I thought, oh, that was the feeling then that I have now. But then look at how it was navigated.
Yeah.
Look at what came out of it, including this group.
Yep.
And the other thing I was thinking was that this is a time of kind of crisis where the felt sense of the us, where the zeitgeist is in our bodies, and that we need to pay attention to that felt sense of the larger world that we're living in and how it is living in us.
Mm-hmm. How we live in the world and how the world lives in us.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that, Lynn. Yes. So maybe that was kind of preparation in a way. You think?
Could be. Or it could be, for some of us, it felt like that.
Yeah. I want to say, Lynn, that you were very lucky to have this group form. Wonderful thoughts, wonderful responses. I feel very, very happy to have been able to talk to you guys. And it's obvious that there's something special about your meeting like this. And yeah, so you're lucky to find one another. Yeah. Dorothy, is it time for these breakout groups?
Yeah, it is. And Christine is going to do that magical thing that takes us out of this universe and plops us in another one.
Okay.
And we'll come back at 9:35.
Excellent.
Give us 15 minutes.
Perfect.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes.
Doris, I love this time because people have had this experience and then we don't know where they've been or what they've said or what worlds they've gone to. And then we get to hear a little bit about it.
Wonderful moment of uncertainty.
Yes, that's right.
Doris. Hi, I wanted to say something. We have quite an argument. Yeah, in our breakout rooms.
Oh,
about the capacity of the capacity to actually handle the uncertainties. Right?
Yes.
Okay. So I think in order to cope with the uncertainties, we need to be free from the uncertainty. Instead of you put in or you struggle with the uncertainties. The example that I'm making just now is when you know there is a mud, you don't jump into the mud and struggle to come up from the mud and to measure the capacities to come up from the mud. It's not going to help you to get out of the mud and not getting dirty. So in order to get yourself free from the mud is to be able to swim in the river, a clean river, breathe, and yes, look at the sky.
Yes.
You know, maintain that serenity, the peace in ourselves, instead of you jump into there and getting stronger to get out of from the mud.
So the I think that the whole idea of nature as a kind of helpful way of allowing us to tolerate the possibility that we're going to slip into the mud is is a very, very helpful thing to do. That you hold out, you let the sun warm your body, you look at the beautiful sky, you see the birds flying, and there is a certain experience of peacefulness and joy in that I think is helpful. Does it lead to certainty? I'm not sure about that. I'm uncertain about that. But
it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go on first. Yeah.
No, but I do think that at least for me, being able, to me, just seeing here in Norway, if there's like that much earth, they will plant flowers in it here because there's such a long winter with so much snow and everything. So when spring comes, every little bit of earth that is capable of nurturing flowers is used, and the daffodils and the forsythia and the crocuses and the bluebells are just so sweet, so dear to me now to see them. And I think it's more sweet at this horrible time in the world. Yeah. So
in knowing that they are still returns with the fragrance, with their presence.
That's right. That's right. So something comes back and returns. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And I want to say something to answer about the world.
Yeah.
My feelings of what is going on in the world is like the government of Trump's is like having some labor pains, creating the chaos is like having the labor pains in the hopes that a baby will come. Okay, but the labor pains is actually giving birth to more collaborations and more stronger ties in the other world, in the other side of the world. Because at the same time they are having, the United States they are having all this, the Southeast Asia, Brazil, and they are having more collaborations. They are actually standing very tightly with each other so that we are not so much impacted and by the uncertainties of the new policies. Okay, so I will look at this as we cannot actually look at the world as a Western world and the Eastern worlds like that. We have to look at it as the whole. Look at it as a whole, It's like we are actually giving birth to something new.
Mm.
Oh,
That
It's actually a balance. It's actually something, a readjusting of power, something like that.
that would
And we
be
are bringing up new values
Mhm.
to the people on the earth. We have to look at it this way.
I would love to be able to be as optimistic as you are, but it's hard for me.
I told Doris about what you said last week, and a Malaysian view. And I told Doris about how you talked about finding a resting place in your heart and
I thought
the rose coming under the snow.
I want to hear what Doris said about it.
I think that was
I'm eager to
beautiful.
know.
Beautiful.
Oh,
Just
thank you.
absolutely beautiful. And I think that what you have to say now about the new birth is incredibly beautiful. I just have I struggle. I struggle to find that.
He is a voice of hope in this group.
Thank you. Thank you.
The community is a place of
Yes.
connection for me.
Absolutely. And
Thank
a
you.
wonderful connection. There are others who, yeah, Steph.
Yeah.
I also have trouble finding that good place. And I was thinking about Doris, what you said about nature and how you kind of, it's sort of, for me, it's a little cause and effect reversal. What I mean is that when you feel really horrible, think of, a severely depressed person is going to look at the daffodils blooming and it doesn't get through. Or if you're a very anxious person, you can look at the daffodils and think, oh my God, how much longer do I have to even appreciate these daffodils? Soon I'll be dead in the ground and I'll be fertilizer for these daffodils. I mean, you have to start out, I think, with a baseline of being pretty okay to be able to get out of yourself enough to appreciate
Absolutely.
all those nice things. And I think it's important to think about that, especially since you were bringing up seeing patients, seeing clients, and not have any kind of pressure there to, be happy and appreciative, and to meet people where they are, which could be in a very dire place.
I completely agree with you, Liz. And I think that if we can manage, even if it's just for a little while, to find our way, the flower in our hearts, that's a good thing. But we may not be able to, and the people we encounter may not be able to for a time. And I think that's important to keep in mind. Thank you.
I think Steph wanted to say something.
Oh, yeah. So, thank you. I wanted to give Vivian a chance to finish because as we were finishing, if you would like, Vivian said something really beautiful about the two Chinese characters that make up the word uncertainty. Is that correct, Vivian?
I think I made a small mistake. The two character together makes the word crisis. But I think uncertainty is somehow when it's over, it's a crisis.
Okay, but you were saying that the two characters are risk and opportunity.
Right.
Right. And so I thought that was so interesting because it feels like there's those two things of risk and opportunity that you brought in, I think are really interesting because I heard from there's opportunities in this and then, and so I just thought that was interesting. And I just wanted to give you the chance to finish because you were in the middle of sharing that. And I thought that was a beautiful observation.
I'd love to hear more, Vivian. That's fascinating.
Okay. It's kind of a Chinese way of thinking. It's like, whenever there's a risk, there's a crisis, there's a risk, but there are also opportunities in there. And also, on the other hand, whenever there's an opportunity and there is some risk in there, which is didn't notice which side we are on.
You know, I think that you can't pull those two ideas apart. They are very
No.
joined, aren't they?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh, lovely thought. Thank you. And yeah, thank you, Steph, for highlighting Vivian's idea. That's great. Thank you.
I think we have to stop and have our poem from Dorothy, and we're going to invite Doris and Jack back to talk about the body over the summer. We'll give you a date for that.
Wonderful. Yeah. Our poem today is Ode on Melancholy by John Keats, and I think it's quite cynic when two things happen in a surprising way.
Synchronistic.
Thank you. When Doris chose this poem, because it was my introduction in college when I was taking romantic poetry, and to write a 20-page paper on this poem, my introduction to the whole idea of impermanence just kind of blew me away. And bear with, there's many very deep images, but I hope you can Google Ode on Melancholy by John Keats and go back to it, because it's not so easy to take in just verbally. No, go not to Lethe, neither to twist wolf's bane, tight-rooted for its poisonous wine, nor suffer thy pale forehead to be kissed by nightshade, ruby grape of Proserpine. Make not your rosary of yew-berries, nor let the beetle nor the death moth be your mournful Psyche, nor the downy owl a partner in your sorrow's mysteries. For shade to shade will come too drowsily and drown the wakeful anguish of the soul. But when the melancholy fit shall fall, sudden from heaven like a weeping cloud, that fosters the droop-headed flowers all, and hides the green hill in an April shroud, then glut thy sorrow on a morning rose, or on the rainbow of the salt sand wave, or on the wealth of globed peonies, or if thy mistress some rich anger shows, imprison her soft hand, and let her rave, and feed deep upon her peerless eyes. She dwells with beauty that must die, and joy, whose hand is ever at his lips, bidding adieu, and aching pleasure nigh, turning to poison while the bee mouth sips. Ah, in the temple of delight, veiled melancholy has its sovereign shrine. Though seen of none save him whose strenuous tongue can burst joy's grape against his palate fine, his soul shall taste the sadness of her might and be among her cloudy trophies hung.
Wow. Thank you. I'll see you all next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Doris.
you so much, Doris. This was
Thank you,
wonderful.
Doris.